Totally Not a Scaredy-Chat, a Miraculous Ladybug Marichat fanfiction. The artwork for this video is a commission by Sheila. You'll find links to her social media in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this one-shot. Marinette and Noir sat in tense silence, staring at the black screen as glitching credits rolled to an uncanny soundtrack of groaning bass. Realizing her fists were clenched around handfuls of comforter, Marinette relaxed her muscles and remembered to breathe. Something moved behind them, and she shrieked, flailing out a kick that managed to strike Psha in the side of his rump before she saw it had only been his tail.
"Ow!"
he cried, rubbing the sore spot.
"What was that for?"
"Nothing." Marinette laughed off her extreme reaction. "Just surprised. I forgot you had a tail." A sly glint crept into his eyes.
"So jumpy. Don't tell me you're scared, princess."
"Psha, are you kidding me? I'm not scared. That movie was not scary." Marinette scoffed, flapping one hand dismissively as she slammed down the cover of her laptop with the other, cutting off that dreadful music. "The special effects were so obvious."
"That sounds so convincing,"
Psha teased, leaning into her personal space.
"I think you're scared."
Marinette shrieked and jumped when she felt something brush against her shoulder. She shoved Psha, who fell laughing against the wall that flanked her bed. "You did that on purpose," she accused. "Keep your tail to yourself." Suddenly, the room was illuminated by a brilliant flash of light. Psha and Marinette both froze, staring at one another with bated breaths and wide eyes. A clap of thunder soon followed, then almost as suddenly, the pounding of heavy globs of water hitting the roof, window pane, and skylight.
"Oh no,"
Psha moaned in genuine despair, pouting.
"I didn't know it was supposed to storm."
"Maybe it's not so bad," Marinette suggested. Judging from the sound of it, though, her optimism was futile. Nevertheless, she opened the skylight by a crack to get a clearer view without the blurry glass in the way, just enough to glimpse curtains of rain pelting down and feel the mist from raindrop ricochet in her eyelashes. The rain was so thick she could barely make out the silhouette of Notre Dame directly across the Seine. Hastily, she dropped the hatch before the wetness could bleed inside. "Nope, sorry, it's pretty bad." Psha pulled a glum face.
"Running in the rain sucks."
He didn't want to admit to the fear that his staff would serve as a lightning rod and attract electric bolts, but that was a reasonable worry, wasn't it? Less reasonable, probably, was the paranoia that a shadowy figure would follow him home and snatch him away before he could get to his bed. He'd much rather stay here in Marinette's warm, comforting room, imagining the company and conversation would ward away sinister intruders. "Why don't you stay?" Marinette offered. Psha's eyes lit up.
"Could I?"
"Sure, why not? I just have to ask Mama and Papa. Wait here." It wouldn't be the first time he'd spent the night, though last time had been an accident. Marinette's parents already knew he was here watching a movie, and she was sure they wouldn't want to send him out into the storm either. She shimmied down the ladder and through the halls, turning on lights as she went. Sharply attuned to the minute, unidentified house sounds coming from the walls, she hummed a tune to keep unsettling thoughts at bay as she headed toward the bakery where her parents were preparing for the next day. With a yes in her pocket, Marinette dashed up the stairs from the bakery to the apartment, not wanting to spend any more time alone than she had to, and scrabbled back up the attic ladder, adrenaline spiking as she threw open the trap door to her room. There was a yelp as Noir jolted in surprise, nearly falling off the chaiselong, his usual sleeping place, where he had already curled up under a blanket.
"What in the world, princess?"
Psha looked frazzled as he sat up, collecting himself.
"Did you really have to come stampeding in like something was chasing you?"
"I was excited to tell you. You can stay," Marinette panted. "Of course, Papa gave the usual embarrassing warnings. Not that they have anything to worry about." She pulled a face of disgust. Psha released a short laugh of relief.
"Okay, phew, good. Thanks, Marinette. You know what they say about cats and water."
"Won't your parents be worried, though?" Marinette inquired, becoming more somber. Shouldn't you call them and let them know you're staying with a friend to wait out the storm? You can use my phone if you'd have to, detransform to get yours.
Meh, they don't know I'm gone.
He shrugged.
I'll just go back early tomorrow, before they wake up.
How could they not know you're gone? He'd been over since 7 and it was already past 10. How could they miss their son being gone all evening?
There's no way out of my room except a door with a camera pointed at it. I'm supposed to be in my room, and as far as they know, I haven't left. No one's scheduled to bother me until the morning.
He joked with an edge of bitterness to his tone. Scheduled? Marinette raised her eyebrow at his word choice. The thought of his bedroom door being watched by a camera was a bit weird too.
Never mind.
Psha shook his head, looking almost as gloomy as when he had first appeared on her balcony that evening. You're upset again, Marinette noted. Do we need to watch another movie? Something happier, maybe? Disney? Psha's face softened into a genuine smile.
Thanks for caring, Princess. I'm fine, and anyway, we'd better go to sleep. Especially if I want to get up early enough to make it home before dawn.
Marinette sighed, concerned about him but not wanting to pry if he didn't feel like talking about it. She went over to her desk, opening drawers until she found a travel toothbrush and toothpaste in plastic from a flight to China a couple years ago. Here. She handed it to Psha. The bathroom's downstairs, to the right.
Thanks.
Accepting the toothbrush, he opened the trap door and began lowering himself down, only to pause when the cool air from the lower section of the house hit his face and an uncanny sense of foreboding tickled his nerves. He had the sudden mental image of a ghostly figure looming out of the darkness and passing through him, and shuddered.
Does that sink work?
He pointed at the one in her room. She gave him a quizzical look. Yeah? Realization dawned on her. Ooh, don't tell me you're too much of a scaredy-cat to go downstairs by yourself.
I am not,
Psha huffed indignantly.
It would just be weird if I ran into your parents.
Why would it be weird? She crossed her arms, not fooled by his excuse. They like you.
Anyway,
Psha skirted the topic.
Why would I go all the way downstairs if this sink works?
Marinette decided she would let him keep his dignity. All right then, go ahead and use it. She turned away to hide a giggle at the relief evident on his face and extracted her pajamas from her closet. I'm gonna go downstairs to wash up and change. Psha's head whipped around.
You're leaving?
Scaredy-Chat, Marinette taunted, ducking under the trapdoor as he threw a pillow after her. 15 minutes later, they were refreshed and tucked into their respective beds. Marinette stared up at the ceiling, trying to banish thoughts of ghastly faces drifting out of the walls from her mind. Mind if I put on some music?
Not at all. Go ahead.
Psha responded immediately, his voice tight. She browsed through her library for something calming, and the playlist of music box-style Ghibli songs caught her eye. She clicked. The music, combined with the steady sound of rainfall, was soothing, at first. As the minutes passed by, though, and the chiming notes continued to stir the air, punctuated by the timpani-roll of thunder, the childlike tunes began to sound sinister. It sounded like the type of too innocent music that prefaced the appearance of a macabre little girl, dressed in white with a mat of tangled black hair, holding a ragged stuffed bunny that looked like it was plotting something. Marinette's hand edged toward her phone. She wanted to turn off the music, but then Noir would find out she was scared. Her pride fought back against the mounting sense of dread in her chest.
Marinette?
Psha's voice drifted up quietly. Yeah?
That kind of sounds creepy.
Okay, you're right. Marinette exhaled in relief. I'll change it. She switched the playlist to Jagged Stone, which was much too noisy and exciting to fall asleep to, even played at a low volume, so she ended up just turning off the music. Silent minutes stretched out like a desert of imagined horrors before Psha spoke up.
What about Bach?
He suggested.
There's nothing creepy about Baroque.
Sure. Marinette ran a search for Bach, but there were so many options she didn't know what to pick. Any particular suggestions?
Well-tempered clavier?
Marinette clicked on an album with a matching name, and a vaguely familiar piano piece began to play. I guess this is okay. Relaxing enough.
Cat's wisdom,
Psha gloated. That isn't even a thing.
Sure it is. There are hundreds of memes. Cats are very wise.
Marinette snorted at the thought of Shenhua wasting time looking up hundreds of cat memes. They fell silent, and at last, Marinette began to drift off to sleep. Until, almost imperceptibly, the grey twilight of sleep gave way to the stark mental image of chains dragging along the ground, accompanied by a vivid scraping. With a jolt of terror, she was back to a state of acute wakefulness.
What's wrong?
A rustle indicated that Psha had sat up abruptly, no doubt alarmed by Marinette's jerky awakening. Nothing, Marinette mumbled, burying under her covers. Now the piano music had started to sound eerie after all, reminding her of a Gothic mansion. She pictured the piano playing by itself, keys depressing like gap teeth. Fumbling for her phone, she turned it off. Why are you still awake?
It's been like 5 minutes, Marinette.
Psha laughed, sounding strained.
Why do you turn off the music?
It was a little A clap of thunder struck at the same time as the room filled with light again, derailing Marinette's train of thought. There was another commotion from inside the room as Psha scrambled up the ladder to Marinette's bed. Hey, what are you doing? Marinette shrieked, the way he was moving reminding her a little too much of the way the undead children had moved in the film. She kicked out in his direction, fending off his approach. He was still too far away, only at the foot of the bed, but he paused and looked over his shoulder.
Shh, he hissed. Do you want your parents to hear? I'm not gonna do anything. It's just, I feel too exposed down there.
Exposed? Marinette let out a laugh of disbelief that he was actually sort of admitting that he was afraid. And that's a good reason to accost me in my bed?
Princess, I'm hurt by your implications. I'm very trustworthy and most certainly don't have any ulterior. Alright, fine, I'll stay down here.
He curled up at her feet like a real cat, then added in a mewling tone.
Please don't kick me out.
She poked him with her toe. I was joking. You don't have to stay like that.
It's fine,
he mumbled. You'll wake up sore.
No, I won't.
He stubbornly stayed curled up. Marinette poked him again. There's plenty of room for you to lay down normally.
If you insist.
Psha relented, crawling up and stretching out beside her with feigned reluctance, as if he hadn't essentially wheedled his way into her bed. There was another flash and roar, and Marinette felt Psha's body tense beside her. He really was spooked. The thought somehow loosened the grip of Marinette's own fright. You know what Maman does at times like this? She asked.
What?
Psha returned cautiously. She gives me a hug. Want one? Psha didn't answer right away, and Marinette questioned her decision to offer a boy a hug in her bed. Maybe that was crossing a line. Just a platonic one, she clarified, just in case. Because of the storm, and to help us sleep. Hugs are nice. I'm not making fun of you, I promise.
You promise?
She could hear the grin in his voice. She poked him in the rib, causing him to recoil defensively. Couldn't resist, could you?
Yeah, please, I accept.
He hurriedly responded to her offer before she could forget about it.
I'd like a hug.
He scooted forward slightly and let Marinette wrap her arms around him. At first, the hug was stiff and awkward, then he relaxed and leaned into it, his head finding her shoulder, shyly reciprocating with an arm looped around her waist.
Thanks. My mom used to give me hugs during storms, too,
he confessed. This time, when lightning struck at almost the same time as the rumble of thunder that reverberated through the house, Psha didn't freeze up. He only buried deeper into Marinette's shoulder, but his body felt relaxed. He was mentioning more details about his civilian life than usual today, Marinette noticed. He had seemed raw earlier that evening, so she didn't jab him about it as Ladybug might have done. Maybe he needed to get things off his chest, even little hints of things that were bothering him. The words "used to" in connection with his mom stuck out. Marinette wondered if it was past tense because he'd grown out of it, or if his mother was not part of his life anymore. In case it was the latter, Marinette tightened the hug. Cradling his head with her right arm, she reached up to tangle her fingers in his hair. He sighed, hot breath fanning against the bare skin of her arm. "Feel better?" she asked.
"Yeah. You?"
"Yeah." She laughed lightly. "This reminds me of... never mind." She'd been about to say the time reverser got them and she'd had to comfort and coax him through every little thing. He'd been somehow really cute like that. Cute? Where had that come from? Endearing. That was a better word. She was exceedingly fond of her partner in a platonic way. Psha shifted to look at her face.
"Reminds you of what?"
The words were accompanied by the faint scent of mint, drawing her attention to the fact that their faces were only a few centimeters apart. He was warm, his voice more gravelly than she remembered, and when his verdant eyes caught the lightning, they looked strangely beautiful, like gems. "Nothing," she whispered. "Forget I said anything." She felt self-conscious, wondering whether she should take her arms back and stop hugging him. But he looked so relaxed, eyes half-lidded and just watching her face with an indecipherable expression. She didn't want to seem cold by retracting her affection. Maybe he could fall asleep like this soon, and then she could withdraw. She didn't think she could fall asleep, though. Why did she feel so vulnerable around him all of a sudden? It wasn't like they'd never been this close before. But then again, there was always something going on to distract them from paying too much attention to one another. He was close enough that she could nod her head forward and her nose would nudge his. As if pulled by a string of curiosity into an unexplored room, her mind began to wander, considering what that might lead to. She almost wanted to try, and for some reason the thought wasn't as unwelcome in her mind as it once would have been. Her heart rate picked up as they held one another's gaze for a few silent moments. Was it true that you could fall in love with a person just by holding eye contact for 4 minutes? She thought she recalled a study about that. Suddenly, he yawned, breaking the mood. On impulse, Marinette blew a puff of air into his mouth, making a mockery of what could have happened. He spluttered and she took the opportunity to break the embrace, flipping over onto her other side so that her back was to him. "Good night, Psha," she managed, cheeks burning secretly.
"Gross, princess."
The mattress shifted as he turned his back on her, too. "Shut up, I brushed my teeth," she quipped, wondering what he was thinking, if he'd caught on to what was maybe, possibly about to happen. Or maybe it was only her. Feeling a bit cold and afraid now that she was no longer touching Psha, she edged backward until the curve of her spine made contact with his. Her blush flared back to life when she felt the slightest weight flick and settle over her waist. She knew what that was. Did he realize his tail was draped over her? Probably not. It was just a belt that he often took off so she could use it with her lucky charm. Not like a real appendage of his or anything. No big deal.
"Thanks for the hug."
His voice sounded sweetly unguarded, matching the current state of her heart.
"And the company. I like spending time with you."
"Me too," Marinette answered. It wasn't quite a logical response and came out barely above a whisper. She didn't want to say too much and give herself away.
"You don't mind me sleeping here?"
he asked cautiously. "You can stay if you want," Marinette murmured, twisting the duvet between her fingers. "I trust you." If she was being honest with herself, his presence was comforting, and transformed the periodic rolling of thunder into a pleasant soundtrack.
"Thanks," he breathed. "Good night, princess."
Silence fell between them, and breathing steadied in a mutual semblance of sleep, though it was a long time in coming for both. This time they couldn't blame their insomnia on images of phantoms and zombies, as their thoughts lingered much closer to home. Thank you for listening to Totally Not a Scaredy-Chat. If you liked it, let me know by leaving a like or a comment below. And once again, I'd like to thank Ink Sheila for her beautiful artwork. Stay tuned for more fanfiction. See you next time!